If you clicked on this video, something in you already knew you would. Not curiosity, not chance. A pull. The kind of pull you've felt your whole life and never had words for. The sense that you were being followed by something, called by something, waited on by something just out of sight. And now the message has finally caught up with you. There is a moment coming. The voice of heaven is narrowing. The wide invitation that went out to everyone is folding into a quiet word spoken to a few. And the warning carried in that word is sharper than anything you've heard before. Do not lose both of them. Do not let the hand that has been guarding you and the one who has been calling you slip out of your reach at the very hour you were meant to take hold. You think you have all the time in the world. You don't. None of us do. But that's not what frightens heaven about your life. What frightens heaven is that you would stand at the threshold you were born for and walk past it because no one ever told you it was yours. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because most people don't lose their way through some grand act of defiance. They lose it through quiet neglect, through a slow forgetting. They wake up one morning 15 years down a road they never meant to take, and they can't even tell you where they made the turn. It wasn't a turn. It was 1,000 mornings of being too busy, too tired, distracted, to take the hand that was reaching for them. And one day they look up and the hand feels far away, and they assume it left. It didn't leave. They drifted. There's a difference, and the difference is everything. So I'm not here tonight to scare you. Fear has never made a single soul faithful. Fear makes people freeze, and frozen people don't take anyone's hand. I'm here to wake you, to put my hand on your shoulder, the way you do for a friend about to sleep through the most important morning of their life, and say, get up. The thing you've waited for your whole life is closer than you think, and the only real danger is that you'd miss it while looking the other way. My name is George. I've spent more years than I can count sitting with people in the hardest seasons of their lives. People who felt chosen and couldn't say why. People who carried a weight no doctor could explain, and no friend could share. And I'm going to tell you something I've learned in all those rooms, all those late-night conversations, all those tears. The ones God marks early are almost always the ones who feel the most alone. So let me talk to you plainly. The way I'd talk to you if you were sitting across my kitchen table, with a cup of coffee getting cold between your hands. Let's begin with the number that frightens people and comforts almost no one. The 144,000. You've heard it tossed around like a riddle. A sealed company, a counted remnant, 12,000 from every tribe, marked on the forehead before the storms were allowed to break. People argue about whether it's literal, whether it's symbolic, whether it's a closed door or an open one. And while they argue, they miss the only thing that matters about it. It is not a head count. It is a description of a kind of person. Think about that for a second. When Scripture seals a people before the trouble comes, it isn't drawing names out of a hat. It's recognizing something that was already there. A readiness, a loyalty that wouldn't bend, a heart that had already learned to listen when the room went quiet. The seal doesn't create the servant. It confirms what the servant already became in all the years nobody was watching. And here's what most people miss. You don't earn that seal by being impressive. You receive it by being faithful in the dark, when there's no audience, no reward, no proof you're on the right road. That's the whole test. Will you keep walking toward God when He seems silent? Will you keep your lamp trimmed when the wedding party is nowhere in sight? Let me make that real for you. Picture an ordinary woman in an ordinary town. Nobody knows her name beyond her street. She gets up before the sun, makes the coffee, packs the lunches, goes to a job that drains her, comes home to a house that needs more than she has left to give. And somewhere in that day, in the car, at the sink, in the 3 minutes before her eyes close, she turns her heart toward God. Not with eloquent words, just a sigh. Just to help me. Just a quiet refusal to let go of Him even when she has every reason to. No one is filming that. No one is applauding. There's no platform, no title, no crowd. And that woman is closer to the seal than the loudest, most celebrated voice you could name. Because the seal isn't given to the seen. It's given to the faithful. And faithfulness almost always happens where no one is looking. That's the part the arguments miss entirely. People want to know if they're in the number. They're asking the wrong question. The question was never whether you're counted. The question is whether you're the kind of heart heaven recognizes when it goes looking. A heart that kept saying yes in the dark. I want you to hold that, because it changes how you hear the warning in the title. Don't lose us both. That's not a threat. That's the cry of a father watching a child wander too close to the edge. Let me tell you about a man who almost lost both, and how heaven refused to let him. His name was Elijah. You know the mountaintop version of him. Fire from the sky. Prophets of Baal humiliated. A whole nation falling on its face crying that the Lord is God. That's the Elijah they put in children's picture books. But that's not the Elijah I want you to meet tonight. I want you to meet the Elijah from the very next chapter. The one who ran. The one who sat down under a broom tree in the wilderness and asked God to take his life. The greatest day of his ministry was barely behind him. And there he was, hollowed out, certain he was the only faithful man left alive, begging to die. Do you understand what was happening in him? He had the calling, he still had the gift. The fire hadn't left him, but he was about to lose the relationship, the nearness, the trust, the sense that the one who sent him was still with him. He was about to keep the assignment and lose the Father behind it. And a calling without the Father behind it will crush you. It will turn into a weight you carry alone until you collapse under a tree in a desert and ask to die. So how did heaven answer him? Not with a lecture, not with a list of his failures. An angel came and touched him. That's the hand, the guardian, the messenger sent to keep him. And the angel did the most ordinary thing imaginable. He fed him, bread and water, let him sleep, woke him, fed him again. Arise and eat, the angel said, because the journey is too great for you. The journey is too great for you. Heaven wasn't scolding him for being tired. Heaven was acknowledging that the road really was too much, and refusing to let him walk it alone. And then the second half. After the angel restored his body, God himself drew near. Not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire. All the loud things Elijah expected, all the things that matched his mountaintop memory. God came in a low whisper, a still small voice. The Father and the messenger, the nearness and the guardian, both reaching for the same broken man at the same time, so he would lose neither one. And I want you to notice what God did not do in that whisper. He didn't shame him. He didn't say, "How dare you run after everything I did for you?" He asked a question. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Gently, like a father who finds his son hiding and sits down next to him instead of dragging him out. He let Elijah pour out the whole lie. "I'm the only one left. They're trying to kill me. I've had enough." He let him say all of it. And then, quietly, he corrected the lie. "You're not the only one. I have 7,000 who never bowed. You think you're alone, you're not. You never were. There were thousands you couldn't see, faithful in their own dark corners, sealed in their own quiet rooms. That's the whisper heaven is speaking over you right now. Not do more, not try harder. Just you're not as alone as the enemy has convinced you that you are. And the proof of that is that you're still here, still listening, still feeling the pull. The drained never feel the pull. The dead under the broom tree don't lift their heads, but you lifted yours. That's the angel's touch already at work in you. That's the picture. That's what "don't lose us both" actually means. The hand that guards you and the voice that calls you are not in competition. They're reaching for you together. And the tragedy isn't that you'd reject them in some dramatic act of rebellion. The tragedy is that you'd drift, tired, discouraged, convinced you're the only faithful one left, until you can't feel either of them anymore. So let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest in the quiet of your own chest. When was the last time you let yourself be fed? When was the last time you stopped striving long enough to let heaven say to you, "The journey is too great for you. Lie down, eat, rest, I'm not finished with you yet"? Because the chosen don't burn out from doing too little. They burn out from carrying too much alone, from believing the lie that being marked means being self-sufficient. It never did. The seal is not a medal for the strong. It's a covering for the ones humble enough to be carried. Now stay with me, because there's a second figure whose story carries the other half of this warning. Daniel, a young man taken from his home, dropped into a foreign empire, surrounded by people who worshipped what he could not worship and feared what he would not fear. Everything around him was engineered to make him forget who he was. New name, new language, new gods. New food laid out on the king's table, rich and tempting, designed to slowly remake him into someone the empire could use. Picture that table for a second. It would have been the finest food a young man from a conquered nation had ever seen. After the long march into exile, after losing his home and his family and his future, here was abundance, and all he had to do was eat it. No one asked him to renounce his faith out loud. No one demanded he curse God. They just set the food in front of him and waited for hunger and loneliness to do the rest. That's how the empire takes the chosen. Not with a sword, with a buffet. With comfort offered at the exact moment you're too tired, and too alone to refuse it. And here is the small, almost invisible decision that set the course of his entire life. He purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. Before the lions, before the dreams, before the kings rose and fell, a young man in a strange land drew one quiet line and said, "This far and no further." Not loudly, not as a protest. Just a decision made in the privacy of his own heart that no one else saw. Think about how easy it would have been to lose both there. To keep a vague, private faith while feeding on everything the empire offered. To tell himself, "I still believe," deep down, while letting the nearness erode one comfortable compromise at a time. That's how most people lose it. Not in one rebellious night. In 1,000 small surrenders nobody notices. But Daniel kept the line. And because he kept it in the small things, when the enormous things came, the den, the lions, the death decree, the nearness was still there. The angel was still there. He could say with a clear heart, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths." The guardian showed up in the den because the relationship had been kept alive in the dining hall years before. Do you see the thread running through both men? Heaven doesn't wait for the crisis to build the bond. It builds the bond in the ordinary so the bond can hold in the crisis. The hand that shuts the lions' mouths is the same hand that was already steadying you through every small, unseen choice to stay faithful when it cost you nothing but your comfort. And let me press on that, because there's a comfort in it people miss. Daniel didn't know about the lions when he drew the line at the dinner table. He had no idea that decades later a jealous council would trap a king into a death decree and throw him to the beasts. He wasn't preparing for a famous miracle. He was just being faithful on a Tuesday. He was just keeping his heart clean when no story hung on it. That's the secret heaven hides in plain sight. The big moment you can't see coming is being won or lost in the small moment you're living right now. The way you handle the quiet faithfulness today is the strength you'll have for the lions tomorrow. Nobody becomes the kind of person who walks into the den unafraid by deciding it at the door. They become it through 10,000 Tuesdays of keeping the line. And every one of those Tuesdays felt like it didn't matter. That's the test. Will you stay faithful in the thing that feels too small to count? Because nothing is too small to count. The whole life is built out of the small things. And that is the turn most people never make. The moment you stop waiting for a dramatic sign and finally see that the relationship was being offered all along. In the quiet, in the ordinary, in the parts of your life you were sure were too small to matter to God. And here's the thing I've watched happen too many times. People feel exactly what you're feeling right now. The pull, the recognition, the sense that something just named a part of them no one ever has. And then they close the video, go back to the dishes and the noise and the long week. And by morning that holy ache is buried under everything ordinary again. The moment came, they felt it, and they let it pass, not because they didn't believe, but because no one ever put a path in front of them. The pull woke them up, and then they had nowhere to take it. I don't want that to be you, not after you've made it this far. Because feeling chosen and not knowing what to do with it is its own kind of wilderness. And I've sat with too many people who wandered that desert for years, sealed and called and completely without instructions. There are messages that pass through your eyes, and there are messages that pass through your spirit. If something in you recognized itself while watching, don't dismiss it. That is the spirit confirming what was already written. The secret protocol carries 7 keys that unveil what heaven deposited in you before you ever arrived. Things no one around you has ever been able to name. It comes with the full audiobook for your moments of prayer, silence, and encounter with God. And you also receive the Awakening Map, the guide that illuminates the 5 seasons of spiritual awakening, revealing with precision exactly where you are and what comes next. The link is pinned in the first comment, but only for a limited time. Don't let this moment pass without a response. This isn't me asking you to buy something. It's me handing you the bread the angel handed Elijah and saying the same words, "Arise and eat." Because the journey ahead is too great to walk with an empty hand. You weren't meant to figure this out alone. Now let me come back to you. Because I don't want this to stay a story about 2 men who lived a long time ago. This is about the threshold you're standing on right now. The 6 minutes in the title isn't a clock on the wall. Don't get lost trying to do the math on the end of the world. That's a trap, and it's the kind of date chasing that has wrecked the faith of sincere people for generations. No one knows the day or the hour. Anyone who tells you they do is selling you fear, not faith. But there is such a thing as your 6 minutes. The window where the door is open, and your hand is free to take hold. The season where the nearness is offered, and you can either lean into it or let it pass. And those windows really do close. Not because God runs out of patience, He doesn't, but because seasons end. A planting season ends and a harvest season begins. A wilderness season ends and a promised land season begins. If you sleep through the planting, you don't get to harvest what you never put in the ground. That's the urgency. Not a countdown to catastrophe, a countdown to your own becoming. The fear isn't that you'll be left behind in some cosmic event. The fear is that you'll arrive at the end of your life having been called the whole time, guarded the whole time, and never once turned around to take the hand that was reaching for you. And I've sat with people at the end of their lives, so let me tell you what that regret actually sounds like. It's never, "I wish I'd built more, earned more, achieved more." Not once have I heard that. What I've heard in those last quiet rooms is something far simpler and far sadder. I felt it pulling at me my whole life, and I kept telling myself I'd get to it later. Later. The most expensive word in any language. The word that has cost more souls their moment than open rebellion ever did. Nobody plans to say no to heaven. They just keep saying later until later runs out. So when I say your 6 minutes are counting, I'm not trying to put a clock on your fear. I'm trying to put a value on your now. This moment, this exact moment, with this pull you're feeling, this softness in your chest that wasn't there an hour ago. This is the open door. Not next month when things calm down. Not after the kids are grown, after the job settles, after you finally feel ready. Nobody ever feels ready. Esther didn't feel ready. Elijah didn't feel ready. You take the hand in the middle of the mess, or you don't take it at all. Let me give you one more, because she carries something the men don't. Esther, a young woman who didn't ask to be chosen, lifted into a palace, into a position she never campaigned for, holding a place she didn't understand. And then the moment came, her people facing destruction, and her in the one room that could stop it. And she was afraid. Of course she was afraid. To go before the king uninvited could mean death. And her cousin Mordecai sent her the words that have echoed down through every chosen heart since. Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? For such a time as this. Not for a comfortable life in the palace, not to blend in and survive. You were positioned. You were placed. The guardian put you exactly where you are. In your family, your town, your strange and lonely situation. For a purpose that's about to come due. And notice what Mordecai didn't promise her. He didn't say it would be safe. He didn't say the king would smile and everything would be easy. He told her the truth. If you stay silent, deliverance will come from somewhere else. But you and your father's house will be lost. In other words, the purpose will be fulfilled with or without you, but you can miss your part in it. That's a hard word and a holy one. Heaven's plan doesn't depend on you, but your place in heaven's plan absolutely depends on whether you say yes when the door opens. Here's the part people forget. Esther almost said no. The fear almost won. She could have lost both, the calling and the king, by staying safe in the palace and letting the moment pass. She could have told herself she was just a girl, just a queen with no real power, that surely God would use someone braver, someone more qualified. How many times have you told yourself that exact thing? Surely God will use someone else, someone who has it more together, someone who isn't as tired, as broken, as ordinary as you. But she fasted. She gathered the others. She said, "If I perish, I perish." And she went. She walked through the door while it was open. And because she did, a whole people lived. Not because she was the strongest, not because she was the most ready, but because in the moment that counted, she stopped saying someone else and started saying, "Send me." That's the choice in front of the chosen. Not whether you're afraid, you will be. The choice is whether you walk through the door while your hand is still free to push it. So let me bring it all the way home. The warning isn't the end is in 6 minutes. The warning is gentler and far more serious than that. It's a father and the messenger he sends both saying at the same time, don't drift past us. Don't keep the calling and lose the nearness like Elijah almost did. Don't keep a private faith while you're fed at the empire's table like Daniel refused to. Don't sit safe in the palace while your moment passes like Esther almost let it. Take the hand while it's reaching, while the voice is still a whisper close enough to hear, while the door is still open and your 6 minutes, whatever they are, however long they last, are still counting. And taking the hand is simpler than you've made it. It isn't a performance. It isn't getting your whole life cleaned up first, so you'll be presentable. Elijah took it while he was face down in the dirt asking to die. Daniel took it as a teenager in a foreign land with no idea where it would lead. Esther took it shaking, certain she might not survive the room. None of them were ready. None of them were polished. They just stopped running their own way long enough to let heaven carry them. That's all taking the hand has ever meant. It's the moment you stop insisting you can do it alone and let yourself be led. You are not the only faithful one left. You never were. There is bread for the journey, and a whisper after the fire, and an angel in the den, and a moment in the palace with your name on it. Heaven has not let go of you. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you'll stop running long enough to be carried. Here's what I want from you, and I mean this specifically. Not a generic comment. I want you to tell me about your broom tree, the wilderness moment, the season where you sat down exhausted and felt completely alone and weren't sure you could take another step. Tell me where you were, and tell me whether the bread ever came. Because someone scrolling past your words tonight is sitting under that exact tree right now, and your one sentence might be the angel's touch that tells them, "Arise and eat." The journey is too great to walk alone, so don't.